What's up, everyone? Welcome to Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond here on Monday morning, on Halloween morning. Actually, completely forgot about it, Sean, until about an hour ago. I was like, oh, crap, it's Halloween today.
It's going to be a spooky show today.
Yeah, it's gonna be that Bears defense was definitely spooky, but yeah. So that's we're gonna have a lot of terrible Halloween reference or puns today. I can already tell how this is gonna go. Anyway, so yeah, we got a ton to talk about. That was an interesting game yesterday, to say the least. Bears lose 49-29. But Sean, it's weird. The Bears give up pretty much a 50 burger in that game, and overall, though, I felt like the reaction was pretty positive, despite a 20-point loss to Dallas.
Well, yeah, look, the defense got picked apart by the Cowboys and by Dak Prescott. And I was looking at next gen stats this morning, and I would have guessed that Dak Prescott's time to throw was pretty low, and it was indeed. He was second in the league yesterday. They were getting the ball out quickly and weren't really giving the Bears much of a chance to even get to the quarterback. And all that said, though, you got some positive things to look back on this offense. I mean, I think the general feeling after this game is that there's promise on that offensive side, and we're kind of starting to see that now for a few weeks in a row. And so I think if you're a Bears fan, you got to be feeling good about Justin Fields and good about the potential for this offense to figure some things out here with their quarterback.
I'm glad you went with the positive side there first, more than the defensive side. I know you hit on it, them getting the ball out quick, but Rick here with Justin Fields looking good at least. Yeah, we definitely will hit on the defensive performance, but I do think you got to start with Justin Fields, because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? You look at this team, and we're not going to remember a 49-29 loss to Dallas and the defense giving up a ton of yards a year from now. What you're probably going to remember more than anything is the development of Justin Fields. And we had talked about, I feel like time and time again, the need to see not just a good half, not just a good game, but to see these weeks start to build upon themselves, Sean. And for the first time in the Justin Fields era, and definitely the first time with this new coaching staff, you're really starting to get a sense that not only is Justin Fields progressing, but the coaching staff is starting to understand how to best utilize his string. And despite the obvious shortcomings on this roster, are putting him in positions to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he ran the ball 8 times yesterday for 60 yards and a touchdown. Much like against the Patriots, we see them getting him out of the pocket and using his legs. And I know some of those are just scrambles on pass plays, but they're finding ways to utilize that strength of his. And that's a good thing that wasn't happening enough early on in the season. You look at the passing numbers, you say 151 yards. Okay, that's not a ton, but it was more about the way that it looked. And he threw two touchdowns, didn't have any interceptions. They were trying to lean on that running game, and it wasn't, it wasn't doing enough early on in that game to, keep them in it. And they fell behind by 2 touchdowns early, and that kind of changed the flow of that game and what they needed to do. But I mean, I think, you look at what the Bears were doing with Justin, and you have a drop deep ball from Velus Jones that would have really made that stat line look good for Justin. And there was another deep ball too that you got to put on Justin's shoulders a little bit, because I think he underthrew Equanimous St. Brown. But those are 2 plays that could have been really big swings in that game.
Yeah, I was trying to jump in there. Velus Jones Jr. It's an interesting mix right now, because I feel like people are being too hard on a rookie and expecting too much of him, but he's really not helping his cause. Anytime he has been in the spotlight, whether that's on punt returns, whether that's on an end around, whether that's yesterday dropping that deep ball, they're just, it's not helping his cause, Sean.
Yeah, I'm trying to not be too hard on him for that play, because
it's a tough play.
He did go to the ground. He did have to lay out a little bit, but the ball's right there in your hands. And if you're an NFL receiver, if you want to be an elite player, you got to make that catch. And then, yeah, there was that other deep ball it looked like Justin underthrew St. Brown a little bit. He had to slow down from his stride, and those are two plays that could have changed things for the Bears, and certainly even made things look better for Justin, and they did look good for Justin overall, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're a rookie and you're in the spotlight for the wrong reasons. I mean, that sucks for Velus. It
Well,
does.
and you see, there was a play, I believe, in the second half, an end around to the left side. And he had a pretty good gain off it. Like, but you saw the explosiveness. Like he made a quick cut upfield, and you're like, okay, I kind of see what they're looking for there. It's really raw right now.
Yeah, you can see the speed. You can absolutely see the speed, and you could argue that maybe that's part of the reason why he struggled on those punts is because he's just trying to utilize that speed, and he was doing it a little bit before he had the ball secure in his hands.
Gary chiming in here with Jones should be moved to more of a running back position, similar to Patterson, referring to Cordero Patterson. And it was so up here in the comments a little further. Mike B. Husky, a good friend of mine, who actually came over. He and his wife were over for dinner at my house after that game yesterday, Sean. But it's funny because we were talking about Mike and I. We were talking about the comparison between Velus Jones and Cordero Patterson, and really wanting to see that the Bears maybe use him in more of the way that the Atlanta Falcons have used Cordero Patterson. Now that's a little difficult right now because you already have David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, but we were kind of talking ahead, like getting ahead of ourselves here. Like, okay, if David Montgomery isn't re-signed, is that a situation where like you're starting to look at Khalil Herbert and maybe you use Velus Jones more in a backfield role than a traditional wide receiver role?
Maybe, I would also point to the fact that they drafted a running back too, in Treston Ebner.
Yeah.
The only thing, I know that they want to use Velus in different ways, and maybe some of that is on these, obviously some of that's on these sweeps and potentially out of the backfield too. Cordero Patterson is one of the biggest humans I've ever seen. I think he's got 20 plus pounds on Velus and a couple of inches in height. Not that size is everything at these positions, but I think that does make a difference when you're trying to use a guy out of the backfield. And, you look at most running backs, they're, 220, 230, big dudes. And not that Velus isn't a big dude for a receiver. He is. I think he's listed at about 6 foot 200. He is a big guy, especially for a rookie receiver. But we haven't gotten to see him do any of that out of the backfield. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't do that. They could pick their spots and try to get him involved that way because it's he's having issues with his hands and securing the football. And one way to get him the football is to just put it in his chest.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike earlier said, and think of all, he had a longer comment that I don't want to throw up here because it's a lot of stats, but he said, and think of all the drops and incompetence around him. And that's really kind of where you're trying to figure things out with Justin Fields a little bit still, right? It's so where now that you're starting to see this build, it's like what's the next step? And you hit on Velus Jones, hopefully becoming more involved. But you look at the other pass catchers. You get Cole Kmet with a touchdown yesterday, first since December 2020. I think the next step here is wondering or trying to figure out where this offense builds from here. Where do you, after seeing yesterday, Sean, what do you think is the next thing that you want to see from Justin Fields?
I mean, yeah, you want you want to get another receiver in there who you can really rely on third downs and who you can pair with Darnell Mooney and have two guys who are really your dynamic duo. And right now they have one part of that duo and they're looking for somebody to step up, but it seemingly nobody is filling in that second role consistently. Darnell had a pretty good game yesterday, when you look at the stat line and I thought he was I thought there were a couple nice connections, especially with Justin, changing his arm angle to get the ball out to Mooney a few times. And you can see that those guys are pretty much on the same page. And, if they can get another elite receiver in here, I think that would really, really help things for Justin because it's hard right now when you got guys dropping passes and they have to do so, they got to address more on the offensive line. Of course, we talked a lot about that last week. And I didn't think that it was all that bad though. Even though you're missing Larry Borum, you're starting right tackle. I thought Riley Reif was fine. He came in there and did what he needed to do, but obviously those guys are banged up on the line. But Justin's going to keep using his legs, and that's great. He's found something doing that. They've been able to utilize that. Uh, it should open up things in the passing game, and another elite receiver would really help there.
I'm happy that you brought up him changing his arm angle, because you saw that more yesterday again that you've seen over the last couple of weeks. There was a play. I can't remember what point of the game it was. It was I believe it was a screen to Darnell Mooney out on the right side, and Jaron Curse came free on it, and it looked like he was going to step right into the lane and swat it down, or even potentially pick it off. And Fields did a really good job at dropping his arm angle down and getting that ball under Curse's arm and out to Mooney for a positive play. That was like those type of things are small adjustments, but they make a huge difference. Not only the immediate short-term impact of just the Bears offense looking better, but seeing Justin make those impact and accurately making those adjustments are really good sign.
Yeah, that's a great sign. And two, you go back to that Patriots game and that touchdown pass to Khalil Herbert, same sort of thing. The Patriots were in cover zero. They had a bunch of pressure coming, and Justin, he just gave a little fake up high and then changed his arm angle and threw more of a sidearm to Herbert, and they were able to run that in for a 25-yard touchdown. And those are tough throws. Those are the types of throws that we didn't really see a whole lot from Justin last year. So, I think you can say that he is making strides and he is making incremental progress. You're not going to see him turn into Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes overnight, but you see little adjustments like that, and you can say, okay, he's moving in the right direction. He's adding tools to his game, and they're using him in the right ways. At least they have the last 2 weeks, and those are positives that you can look on moving forward.
They're positives, and like you now look at back-to-back games where Bill Belichick is well known for taking young quarterbacks and pretty much destroying them week in and week out. The Bears offense played very well. Justin Fields performed very well against Bill Belichick and that Patriots defense. And yeah, they lost that game yesterday, but that was a really good Dallas defense. Like, this Cowboys team is probably one of the top 3 contenders in the NFC, along with maybe top 4. You look at Philly.
I'd throw them in there, definitely.
Yeah. Philly. I right now, Philly, Dallas. I still like San Francisco and who am I? Minnesota. I think are probably the 4 best teams in the NFC right now. That Dallas team is really good. They might be the best team in the NFC. I'm not sure. It's kind of. But what I'm trying to say is you have now back-to-back games against quality opponents where Justin Fields performed well. The Bears made proper adjustments. It's for the first time in a long time, despite the fact that they lost that game, like, I felt confident when the Bears offense took the field yesterday. Like, you were confident they were going to move the ball and it was going to be entertaining to watch. And it's been a long time since I felt about that way about the Bears.
Yeah, it's nice to see them, especially after the first drive didn't go very well for that offense. It's nice to see them, even though they're in a 14-0 hole. They scratched and clawed their way back into that game, and it was a 1-possession game in the third quarter. And that's because your offense was moving the football, and you were, Justin was running and throwing it well. And I thought both running backs, outside of David Montgomery's fumble on that Micah Parsons play, I thought both running backs played really well. I mean, David ran really hard in he's so good in those short yardage situations. Just keep moving his legs and get you a first down when you really need it. And then Khalil kept hitting the holes like he has been all season. And I really like the 1-2 punch they got right now at that running back spot.
Yeah, the running backs, that's a good combination right now. And despite the inconsistencies on the offensive line and the issues that they've had there, whether that's the overall play or the injuries, the Bears are finding ways to move the football and make the most out of what, let's be honest, are clear deficiencies at a talent level right now. So let's go ahead now, Sean, though. Oh, first off, it's about 15 minutes in here, and I realize I haven't really even gotten the propers out of the way yet. So get that out of the way before we start going over the defense. If you haven't already, make sure to work your way over to shawlocal.com. We got all of our content there. from yesterday's game. We'll have follow-up content here this afternoon as Sean heads over to Hallis Hall for post game or post week 8 debrief, I guess I'll call it here. But make sure you follow us on Twitter at Bears_Insider. Follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. Follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. And Sean, again, I always forget what's if they want to follow you on Instagram as well. What's that?
Yeah, it's at Bears_reporter.
Yes. And of course, the Shaw Local Bears Insider podcast is sponsored by Marengo Guns. Marengo Guns, always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And now, Sean, we spent 15 minutes or so talking about Justin Fields and the Bears offense and all the positive that come with it. The other side of the coin is 49 points allowed yesterday. And it wasn't a tough 49 point for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they came right down the field. Particularly those first 4 possessions. I'm pretty sure the Cowboys scored on all 4 of those, if I recall.
They did,
correctly.
yes, touchdowns on all 4.
Yeah, I mean, it was at times it looked like the Bears didn't even have a defense on the field. Let's start with the fact that again, that Dallas team is really good, Sean.
Oh yeah, certainly. And we were talking about it on Friday that this might be Dak was sort of knocking off the rust last week in his return from that thumb injury, and this might be the chance he has to sort of look like his old self. And I think he did. He ran in a touchdown. He was throwing it all over the place. I really liked their game plan. They were getting the ball out quick, and a lot of times he was hitting his first read on those looks. And obviously Tony Pollard, your favorite running back, had maybe his biggest game ever. I don't know, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that was a heck of a day for Tony Pollard.
He looks so explosive, man. Like, it's just you saw immediately after the game Jerry Jones talking about that we go as Zeke goes, and it just that I guess when I talk about contenders in the NFC, that's why I hesitate to call Dallas like one of the top contenders. It's because of silliness like that.
Yeah. So what are they going to do when Zeke comes back? I mean,
yeah. Like giving him that contract drove me insane at the time because I love Tony Pollard. The kid is incredibly explosive. Like you have very good playmakers in Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb and Dak is a quality quarterback. And it's like, do you really want this plotting offense around Zeke Elliott? Like just get out there with Tony Pollard and those wide receivers and sling it. But I'm getting off topic here.
We're getting deep in the Cowboys talk here, but it's interesting because I went back and looked this morning at the 4 years that Matt Eberflus was the coordinator with the Colts, and usually they were one of the best teams against the run and maybe not as good against the pass. Although 2020 especially, they were really good in both phases. This year it has been the opposite. And I really think that defensive line is just hurting them. I mean, they can't stop the run. They weren't sacking the quarterback with Robert Quinn. They certainly weren't sacking the quarterback yesterday without him. And when you're not finding success in the trenches, it's going to be hard to do what you want to do, whether that's on offense or on defense in the game of football.
Yeah. I mean, the front 7 in particular is really struggling right now. I mean, Roquan Smith, for all the praise we had for Roquan, really after the New England game, played really well there. The exact opposite yesterday.
He disappeared.
Yeah, and you just can't have that. We talked about it on the Friday preview show. Can't remember who had commented about after Roquan having the interception, doing the money kind of the pay me sign and talking about that. But like for all the plays there, like, hey, pay me. It's in a game like that, Roquan Smith can't disappear, and
you can't disappear. He had 5 tackles yesterday, and we're used to seeing him with double-digit tackles most of the time. I think he's got an absurd number of double-digit tackles games. And Eddie Jackson tied his career high in tackles, and Jaquan Brisker was number 2. And it's never a good sign when your safeties are leading you in tackles. I mean, that just tells you right there that they're throwing the ball pretty well on you. And Dallas did that. They were great on third down. It reminded me a lot of that Vikings game a couple of weeks ago where, the Bears just could not get a stop on third down. The Cowboys were just making it look easy, especially in that first half. Like you said, 4 touchdowns on those first 4 drives. And I think the Bears are just missing a big dude inside. They're missing their Akeem Hicks type guy who can really help you stuff the run, because they don't have anybody right now who can do that for them.
Gary had said, clearly the defense heart was not in it due to Quinn being traded. That's I
don't buy that.
Yeah, that's not right, Gary. Like I don't think that's the case. Like what you're inferring there is like that they kind of gave up a little bit because Robert Quinn was traded, and this team isn't ready to give up.
I don't think Robert Quinn would have made a difference yesterday.
Yeah,
because they were getting the ball out so fast. I don't know that anybody was going to get to Dak with this game plan.
No, I don't think it wasn't that their heart wasn't in it. It wasn't that they gave up. There's just not enough talent on this defense. And I mean, there's not enough talent on this roster altogether. It's what we've been harping on going back to February and going back to before free agency about how they needed to build up this roster a little bit more just to try and keep the bottom from falling out. And you're able with the upside of Justin Fields, like you're able to do things to disguise the deficiencies on your offense a little bit more than you are on your defense. Like they're just kind of at the mercy of their personnel. I think right now there's not a ton they can do, particularly when you see them against like a team like the Dallas Cowboys, when they play Buffalo later in the year, when they play Philly later in the year, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to look a lot similar to this, Sean.
Yeah, you're talking about when the Bears face those teams. Yeah. I mean, I would expect it to look quite similar to this. I mean, the more we have a pretty good sample size now with 8 games, and the more I watch this team, the more I really think they're going to have to invest in that defensive front, because it's not good enough right now. And yes, Travis Gibson is a guy that you like, a young guy with promise. Obviously, they drafted Dominique Robinson, but those guys aren't answers yet on that edge. And you don't really have anybody that you're really all that excited about at the defensive tackle spot either. I mean, Justin Jones wasn't your first pick in free agency, and he's been all right. Some of those guys, they're doing the best that they can, but I just don't think that it's the Bears just don't have the pieces up front to really have the impact on the game that they want to have, especially when they're just rushing 4.
Yeah, and Gary followed up here. Eddie called out some of his side after the game, so respectfully disagree.
He was asked specifically if the Robert Quinn trade had any impact on those guys this week, and he brushed that off. He said, "No, that's not it. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but we just have to play better, and guys didn't do their jobs," was essentially his answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't him, I think, saying that there was a lack of effort. And listen, he's not going to sit out there and say like, "Oh, we understand that we don't have enough talent on this defense." Like
they're never going to say that.
Right. I mean, they're going to say that they need to play better, that guys need to step up and fulfill their roles. But like, I think that this locker room knows what they have right now.
Yeah. Our colleague Jason Leisure over at the Sun Times asked Eberflus about this. I don't know if you listened to Eberflus last night, but he said, do you guys just not have the talent over there? And of course, a coach is never going to admit that. And Eberflus, of course, said, no, we got the talent. We just gotta execute better. And that's, coach speak, blah, blah, blah. But, they know what they have. And Ryan Poles knows what he has. And they have to get better in some of these areas.
We had kind of already hit on this, Gary, earlier. It said, is D-line a bigger line need than maybe O-line at this point?
They're both big needs.
Yeah. And see, and this is going back. This is where we get into that. And there's questions about free agency and stuff down here that we'll get into a little bit. But again, like this is where it comes back to addressing, like there were steps that they should have taken, I felt, that would have put them in better position going into year 2. I think it was Rick talking about, again, $120 million. Like, can you solve everything? I'm going to see if I can find that question up here now.
It'd be nice to have one of these positions figured out.
Yeah. So like
from last March.
Yeah. Rick said earlier, with all the Bears cap space in 2023, can they fix wide receiver, D-line, and O-line positions all in one offseason?
It would have been nice to fix one of them last March.
Right. Like if Rick, yes, you can potentially fix all those. in one off season, it's really difficult to do. And most of the time you're going to get it wrong and you're going to end up with contracts that you don't want on your books.
And you're going to have to fix it with I don't care how much cap space you have. You're going to have to fix it with a combination of free agents and draft picks. And anytime you're talking about a draft pick, there's a little bit of a gamble there because and any one of these picks has a potential to not pan out. But I do think that they got to address both those spots. And the more I watch this team and you look at what they did last year with their top 2 picks being defensive guys, and obviously Eberflus loves his 4-3 defense. That's one of his that's his baby, so to speak. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them use a first or second round pick on a guy on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly, what their big first splash before it ended up backfiring, a Larry Ogunjobi, like they were looking for that nose tackle, that anchor for this defense, and they're still trying to find that. So I wouldn't be surprised whether that's in free agency or the draft. But I mean, they need help on the defense in the line. They certainly need more help at linebacker, and some of that's going to come down to Roquan Smith if he returns or not. I mean, I can't see them letting Roquan walk at this point, whether he's franchised or not. Like, I just don't think that you can, with everything that you need to address this coming off season, can you really allow a player like Roquan Smith to walk out the door as well?
I really don't think they can. And I know he had a dud of a game yesterday. He wasn't really in the right spot too often, but you've seen the abilities that this guy has, and you saw what he did a couple nights or last week against the Patriots. And I don't think there's any way that they're going to trade him or let him walk. He's going to be franchise tagged. And you look at this roster right now, as far as I know his name comes up a lot as we're nearing the trade deadline tomorrow, in fact. But they don't have anybody to play that spot if they don't have him. I mean, I don't think that they have any faith in any of these backups that they have right now. Jack Sanborn has hardly been on the field as far as defensively. I don't think they want to leave themselves in that position without really a starting linebacker.
Yeah, I don't expect there to be any moves before tomorrow. In terms of the Bears trading veterans away, Gary had asked, trade deadline tomorrow, what Bear is likely to leave? And do you think Poles trade for anyone? Elijah Moore for a late pick. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Bears likely to leave, I mean, I would circle Roquan, I would circle Montgomery, but I wouldn't call either of them particularly likely. I think Montgomery would maybe be the more likely of the two, in my opinion. But I also think that the Bears, they finally got a good thing going at that running back spot with these two guys. I don't think they're going to want to mess that up. I know fans want them to go out and make a move at receiver, but I kind of feel like N'Keal Harry was their move. And he's still only played in 2 games and hardly been involved. And I think they want to see more out of that and see what they can make of that after trading a 7th round pick for him in the summer.
Yeah, he's going to become more involved in this offense over the next few weeks. I could see them making a trade like for I don't want to say Elijah Moore. And it's really difficult to read the NFL trade deadline and who's actually available and who's not. I wouldn't be shocked to see them trade for a wide receiver if they could find someone like Elijah Moore or any like there's been some rumors like Chase Claypool potentially being available.
Yeah.
Like something like that could make sense. I don't expect the Bears to make any moves tomorrow. But I mean, I think that's more possible that they trade for someone than they move someone off this roster right now. I just don't see the upside of moving anyone because I just don't think that you're going to get value for someone like David Montgomery or Roquan Smith right now that it's going to make it worth it.
And I believe that Ryan Poles is far more intent on keeping his draft picks and not giving up too much. A name that I saw out there, Kyle, just in the last day or two was Brandon Cooks from the Texans.
Yeah, nice player.
I don't know what it would cost to get him. I haven't really looked into comparisons, but
that that I see a move for a veteran like that to be a lot less likely than a younger guy still on a rookie contract that's kind of busted out and looking for a change of scenery.
And I think if the Bears do make a move, that's going to be what it is. It's going to be a late round pick for a guy who could potentially outplay what he did at his previous spot. Much like, and that's why I just keep going back to, that's N'Keal Harry. That's exactly, they already have that guy. So would they make that move again? I don't know.
So maybe they wouldn't make that for a perimeter. Like if you say, okay, we got Harry on the perimeter, we're gonna have Mooney outside. We don't really have anything on this roster currently that would be more your traditional slot receiver. So maybe that's where they look for something a little bit more. I want to see here. Rick had a question, kind of in the same vein. This is looking to head towards free agency and stuff, but would you rather gamble on a free agent wide receiver or a drafted wide receiver? And so, first off, this is one reason why I think if the Bears were going to make any trade, it could be for a wide receiver at the trade deadline for a younger guy, because it would eliminate the question that you're asking, or at least potentially eliminate the question you're asking, Rick. Now, personally, Sean, before I throw it over to you, I would say I'd rather the Bears draft a wide receiver high than gamble on a free agent wide receiver, because you've seen it over the years. Top wide receivers typically don't make it to free agency. Those guys are retained by their team for a reason. And like the guys that do make it there, the volatility is so high. Yeah, there you can find a player, a competent wide receiver in free agency, but the bust rate is so incredibly high.
Yeah, it is. But, I think the Bears have the cap space that they can afford to try to gamble a little bit on a veteran type guy. I would want somebody with a proven background, who, yes, you might be overpaying a little bit, but if you don't really have a whole lot of veterans in that wide receiver room, and I would just like to see them get a veteran guy who's been around the block once or twice and can come in and bring a little bit of leadership to that group, because you got a bunch of young guys, and Darnell Mooney has obviously been really good young player for you. But I think they just got to try to get somebody in here who can be a reliable target for Justin Fields and who can kind of lead that group.
Yeah, I get that, but like as I was alluding or kind of saying there, like you look at how difficult it is to develop or to identify the correct fit there, right? Because like you look at Kenny Galladay, a guy that I really liked when he hit free agency out of Detroit. I'm pretty sure at the time that the Bears had made an offer for him. He ends up in New York. I thought it was a pretty good fit for what the Giants needed, and it's been a complete train wreck for him there. I just feel like that is the story that you're almost expecting to hear when you give a wide receiver a big time contract nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. These guys, especially, we saw the wide receiver market, those prices skyrocketed last year. You're right. It's really tough, but I do think it's still a gamble in the draft too. I mean, for whatever reason, these wide receivers, it's hard to get this right. And that's going to be one of Ryan Pohl's biggest challenges here in the next couple of years.
This is why I love the chat and the questions that come in and the comments that come in. And thank you for everyone who's throwing questions in there. And if you are in the YouTube chat, you're on YouTube right now, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, please. Helps everyone find the show a little bit easier through the algorithm. Mike Johnson had asked this question, though, and I had no idea what the answer was, which was, did Robert Quinn do anything for the Eagles yesterday? I had not watched any of that game yet. But Rick following it up for us here with Quinn had 2 pressures in 20 snaps. Love it.
Rick is paying attention. Love it. Yeah. So 20 snaps. I mean, yeah, that's not a ton for a guy, but that's not a ton. But for a guy who is just coming in this week, it's not really surprising that he wasn't out there the whole game.
So where do you want to go from here, Sean? What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Yeah, guys, hit us up with some questions if you got more in the comments. I mean, where are you sort of? We're 8 weeks in. We were talking off the air last week about maybe doing some like halfway awards or whatnot. Where are you at with this team midway through the season? What's your general feel on the vibe here?
I feel, and this is so weird because it's changed so drastically, I feel like, over the last couple of weeks, because what everything comes down to is Justin Fields progressing. And there was definite worry a few weeks ago that this thing was about to go off the rails for Justin Fields, and that you legitimately were going to have questions after year 2 and after your first year of the Ryan Poles regime of if they needed to invest in another quarterback, if they needed to potentially draft another quarterback in the first round. That's where we were headed. It was going south like that. And it's completely changed now over the last couple of weeks, where if Justin Fields is going to continue on this track, you feel so much better about the outlook of this organization, because yeah, there are a ton of holes to fill, but we see it around the NFL. You can gloss over a lot if you hit on quarterback. And I'm not ready to say that Justin Fields is going to be a sure thing hit at quarterback, right? But you are now seeing the type of progress that you really wanted to see out of him in year 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what a month can do. You get into October a little bit, and those first 3 weeks, you're right, Kyle. It was almost like the sky is falling in sort of approach to the reaction to what was happening at quarterback. And I've been impressed with Matt Eberflus's staff and just the adjustments that they've made, particularly on that offensive side. Obviously, things weren't good last week with defense or yesterday. But you look at the adjustments they're making, and they're seeing what they have on this roster and playing to those strengths, and they're seeing what they have in a quarterback and playing to his strengths. And you've seen how much that has opened his running ability, has opened things up in the passing game, because he wasn't running the ball early in the season and he wasn't finding any success throwing it. And they were leaning really heavily on David Montgomery and that power running game. And while they still are leaning on those running backs, they've got Justin into those favorable spots. And I think you can feel a little bit optimistic with where this is heading. I'm not ready to expecting this team to make a push for the playoffs or anything like that this season. But, I think they might win a game or 2 or 3 more than maybe we were expecting in August.
Yeah, at dinner last night, after dinner last night talking with Mike, and that Bears line of 6.5 wins, that going into the season, bettors were pounding the under on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now Vegas is sitting there going, kind of laughing like, man, this Bears team might make it to 7 or 8 wins, which I didn't think there was any chance in the world. And I think that is realistic. Like, I think there is a scenario where the Bears win 7 or 8 games now, and as Mike pointed out, like the Vegas books are going to absolutely clean up if the Bears get to that mark.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was that's a low bar, and we were all kind of saying I might have picked them to be 6-11. I can't remember what my preseason prediction was, but that might have been right about where it was. And yeah, I mean, they're looking like they're figuring some things out, and that's what you want when you got a first year head coach and a new staff, and they are trying to figure this thing out.
And the other thing I want to bring up that from my conversation with Mike yesterday was, and this ties into the Justin Fields and the progression that we're seeing. I didn't watch all of the London game. I was kind of working around things and half paying attention, but you're starting to see Justin Fields have the progression and not making the same mistakes over and over, right? And what you saw out of Trevor Lawrence yesterday, and what you've seen out of Trevor Lawrence so far this season, is you haven't seen progress in terms of, like, Trevor Lawrence is making the same mistakes this year, like dumb plays in the red zone, that he was making last year. And that's where you start to get a bit concerned. And that's where I think the optimism with the Bears starts to really start to ratchet up here, is when you start to feel like Justin Fields is not making those same mistakes. And that comes down to that, like a small thing, like the adjustment with the arm slot, right? That's where it starts to really feel like it's building on itself.
Yeah, and you look at, you just look at the stat line, and it's not the most impressive thing, but 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. How many of those interceptions? At least 2 of them were tipped passes at the line. Maybe another one was tipped in there. I can't remember exactly, but some of these mistakes, they're not dumb mistakes. He's not throwing bad picks. He's not throwing Mitch Trubisky picks out there. And so that's
just sideswiping Mitch out of nowhere.
That in itself is is showing that he knows what he's doing out there, and he knows he's getting a better feel for that pocket and knows when to run. And he generally seems to know where he's going with the football, and I think that's a really good thing for a young quarterback in his second year.
I think we got a new one in here, I think, or a new viewer, Jojo Loco 5150. Don't think
All
I've seen
right.
that name. And thanks for joining the show, Jojo. Time in this offense is going to make everything better. The wide receiver on our roster are as good as other teams' 2s and 3s. Yeah, that is. I mean, part of it is time, and the other thing that's really encouraging here, and I don't want to undersell, is the adjustment that this coaching staff has made. And in particular, Luke Getsy on the offensive side of the ball, because that was the other component of this, where I didn't feel like the adjustments were taking place. And then after that Washington game, like you've seen the way that they use those 11 days. We talked about it, and at the time, I thought the Bears were kind of paying lip service, or you hear from coaches about, oh, we're going to go back and review everything, and we're going to make the adjustments. Everything is on the table, right? But it actually feels like it there. Like it felt like the Bears looked at what they were doing, said this isn't working. Luke Getsy looked around, and maybe it was just the combination of the fortunes of coming off that game and then looking at your next opponent in New England and reviewing the tape of what Baltimore did and saying, oh, like that really worked. Maybe we should start incorporating more of this. Whatever happened, they made the proper adjustments, and that's a good sign. Like Luke Getsy properly looked at what he had on offense and what they could do to make things work, and they did it. And when you combine that with the progression of Justin Fields, I feel better about this Bears team than I have in a long time.
And you know what? They have a chance to do that again because they still have their real bye. They still have their full on bye, not just their mini bye coming up. You can take these next 5 games. If you want to break the season off into 3 chunks, 3/3 or whatever, and you can do that again and reevaluate yourself going into that final stretch there, where you want to get your final evaluations on some of these young guys in December and into January. And I agree. I like what they were able to do coming off that break. I like that they sort of, they put aside their egos and said, what can we do to move the football? What can we do to make this better right now with these guys we have on the roster? And they did it. They've been able to move the football these last couple of weeks. I mean, you scored 29 points against that Cowboys defense yesterday. You should be able to win that game.
Well, I don't know if you should be able to win the game, but
I mean, 29. Hey, you scored 29 points against anybody in the NFL. You should be in the game. It shouldn't be a 20-point loss.
Yeah, like they got within 28-23, and I actually thought for when they got to that point, I mean, that's early in the third quarter, I want to say, and it's like, man, they might pull this off. But yeah, things kind of go.
Obviously, the defense is a whole nother.
Yeah, the defense,
a whole nother thing.
The defense is a whole nother thing. The David Montgomery fumble hurt, and obviously Justin Fields here we are. We're 40 minutes in. We haven't really addressed that yet. What's your take of Justin Fields?
Oh man, hurdling. He was playing hurdler out there, going running down the track, a track meet or something. I don't know. That was such a weird sequence of events. That was so strange. I mean, you got to be aware in that situation that you got to touch the guy. You're the first guy over there to him. I understand that he's the quarterback and he's not going to tackle a 240 pound linebacker. But
nice
you just gotta be aware in that situation.
Yeah.
And I think the Bears, it was so weird because the Cowboys huddled up around Parsons. I say huddle up. This all happened in the span of like 2 seconds, but they were celebrating.
Yeah.
They were celebrating for a half a second before they realized, oh, nobody's touched him. Maybe he should run. And I think the Bears were just kind of reading what the Cowboys were doing. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, right, we got to touch this dude. So I put that more on everybody, not just Justin. I mean, that was a weird spot Justin was in there.
But I think that plays, and the reaction out of Chicago fan base is an indication of where the fan base is right now. Because everyone was like, well, that's dumb. But like there are a lot of times like that would have caused quite a bit of outrage in the Chicago market for that. And everyone was just kind of like, whatever. Like, like they were going to lose the game. They should have lost the game. Like, but the offense played well. So,
that was kind of the bow on top. I mean, It would have been surprising if they made that comeback. I know that at that point in the game, there was still the possibility to do that, but this is a young team that's learning, and they've made some mistakes. We saw that in that Vikings game when they were trying to come back, and while you'd like to see them finish off a comeback like that, I think that's something that we will see more and more out of this team as they gain a little bit more experience and maybe bring in some more veterans too over these coming months.
Jojo, thanks for covering my comment. Yeah, anytime, man. Anyone who is listening that doesn't regularly jump into the comments, please do so. It really helps us steer the show. It's so much easier to read through comments and know what you guys want to talk about than Sean and I try and figure it out ourselves. But we are heading towards 50 minutes here. Want to start wrapping this up. So if you have anything that we haven't hit on, any questions left for us, throw them in the chat there. Timothy Wire, this coaching staff seems to figure out the whys, something Nagy and his staff never seemed to figure out in 4 years. Yeah, that's why I think Bears fans after yesterday are feeling good. It's because despite the fact that they gave up 49 points, that you saw once again the adjustments from the offense, and you have a bit of faith that while I expect this defense to continue to struggle quite a bit over the second half of the season, I think that they will make some adjustments to at least rein it in a bit, Sean.
Yeah, and I think you want a coaching staff that is willing to make adjustments, and that was sort of the Matt Nagy downfall, is that they didn't, he wouldn't change the offense, and that one stretch in 2020 when they did, they made a playoff push, even though albeit during an ugly season that was squeaking into the playoffs with the last spot. But I like what I've seen from this Matt Eberflus staff, and they're willing to do what it takes to win games, and if that's to go away from your bread and butter, or what you thought before the season would be your bread and butter, that's okay.
Gary had asked earlier, and I see him following up on it here. Trade Jalen Johnson for a first and a fourth. Move Gordon outside. Sean, what do you think of that?
I don't think there's any chance they trade Jalen Johnson.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just creating another hole for yourself. He's your best cornerback. Obviously, Gordon's promising. You got a young rookie, a second-round pick that you think highly of, but there's a reason teams don't throw towards Jalen Johnson. And you take him out of the equation, that's just going to make everything harder on everybody else.
I also don't think you're getting a first and a fourth for Jalen Johnson right now. Like teams respect him. I don't think that when you're talking about a first round pick for a cornerback, you're talking about elite of the elite. I don't think that he is thought of that way around the league yet. He might get to that point, but you're not getting a first or a fourth. And Sean's right. You're just creating another hole there. It looks like you have your secondary set pretty much for the next 4 to 5 years here with Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, and Eddie Jackson. Maybe not 4 to 5 years, but at least in the short-term window here, maybe next 3 to 4 would probably be closer to it. I don't. There's just no chance they're trading Jalen Johnson.
I know Jalen's in his third year, but he's 23 years old. He's a young dude, and he has room to keep getting better.
Yeah, like they're gonna use that secondary as a building block of this team. They're gonna use Justin Fields on that side of the ball and a young secondary, and they're gonna try and build out from there. So that's just Jalen Johnson's not getting moved. Let's see. Anything else, guys? Here, I'm trying to see. Sean, do you notice anything that I've missed that you wanted to hit on?
No, I think we've mostly hit on most of it here.
All right. Well, let's see. So we got a matchup this coming weekend. Let's quickly wrap up with that. What do you think? What do you think going against Miami?
Speaking of that secondary,
yeah. Speaking of
that, this is going to be a tough test. I mean, the Dolphins. I mean, those two receivers. I thought I saw something on Twitter this morning that they have the most combined yards for a pair of teammate receivers through 8 weeks that's ever happened. Those guys are the focus of this offense, and that's going to be a real tough test for not even circling Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson, but Kyler Gordon and Kindle Vildor and those young guys. I mean, I think they're gonna really try to attack the Bears.
It's weird to say, considering the first 6-7 weeks of this season, but we're looking at a scenario where I expect over-unders for Bears games all of a sudden to start shooting up now. Like we were looking at over-unders at like 39, 40 points for Bears games. I think you're going to start seeing these up here at 44, 45, 46 if this Bears offense is going to start playing like this because they can't stop anyone. Like Miami, this is a game I haven't even looked yet. Anyone, if you can throw it in chat, I'm interested. What is the over-under? What did it open at for this Bears game? Because there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game, I think, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect both these teams to put up a lot of points, and it's going to be a track meet out there, and I don't know, we've said a lot of nice things about the Bears offense on this show today. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep up with what the Dolphins are doing.
Well, I mean, we say that, but like Detroit got out to a lead yesterday and like was in that game. I mean, it was a good game for the Detroit Lions. The Miami defense is not playing very well. Like DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, both having good games, which is exactly what the Bears want to do. Like they want to use both of those running backs. They want to utilize what they have in that ground game. So I think the Bears are going to be right in this. Let's see, Mike tossing in there. Bears 4.5. Here, I'll throw it up here. Bears plus 4.5 over under of 44.5. And of course he says pound the over. I agree. I agree with him there. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored.
Miami's given up 24 points per game. They rank 26th against the pass defensively.
They gave up 27 in the first half against Detroit yesterday, and then Detroit didn't score again. So,
and you look at this, you got the Dolphins this week, and then you got the Lions next week. I mean, the Bears could put up a lot of points these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, isn't that fun? I am absolutely okay with
that. They got the Lions twice still this year, and that Lions defense has got all kinds of holes.
Yeah. The over-under is going to be flying up the scoreboard, I think, over the next month or so for these Bears games. It's going to be a lot more entertaining to watch, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Make sure you stick at shawlocal.com. We're going to have full post week 8 coverage. We'll start getting you set for Bears Dolphins later this week. And then on Friday, Sean and I will be back. We're trying to hit this up twice a week whenever our schedules allow. We will do that Friday morning for you at 9:30. I think, Sean, 9:30 work?
Oh, yeah.
On the point. Yeah. 9:30 will be at our usual time Friday morning. With that, going to go ahead and sign off. For Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We will talk to you on Friday.